This is the KCB SNL Rally, and for the 6th round of the KCB Kenya National Rally Championship, the organizing club for the event, the Kenya Motor Sports Club, revisited roads in the Rift Valley that have not been rallied on for nearly 10 years. It evoked memories of when the safari regularly ran over the sections back in the 1990s, when the harsh remote roads were a real challenge. With the passage of time, the roads have been improved and are now a highway by comparison, and it was expected to be the fastest rally of the season. The only element of concern was that at this time of the year, the area is known for sudden thunderstorms that could instantly turn the roads into a mud bath. Baldev Chaga was in command of the championship, having opened up a 100-point lead and only needs podium places in the remaining 3 rounds to take the title.
We've tried as hard as we can to prepare the car, make it as reliable as possible. Unnecessary risks are definitely out. The pace will stay, that's for sure. We've built a good rhythm this year and we don't want to break it.
Carl Tundo, the defending champion, was certainly not going to let Chaga get away easily.
I'll make him fight for it.
And back off at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Let him have it at the end, but
The pre-event check of the cars took place at the Crossroads shopping mall on the outskirts of Nairobi. Overhead, the low cloud cover already looked threatening, forcing the final briefing to the drivers to be held indoors.
The main fueling point is now at Olepolis, but for a few cars, the 1 or 2 Mitsubishis, they will be allowed to refuel at Oltepesi.
Please don't even attempt to open your bonnets. There is no tire change.
The cars were held overnight in the shopping center car park and early the following morning headed to the KCB Kawangware branch for the ceremonial start. The starting order for each rally in Kenya is based on a seeding system calculated on points gained by past performance, except for the top 6 who lead the events on a rotational basis. On this event, it was Azar Anwar and Julius Gige's turn to be first on the road. On the transport to the first section, the cars crested the Gong Hills which sit astride the rim of the Rift Valley. The hills include 7 peaks stretching nearly 20 kilometers across, but today they still had their nightcap on. As the cars descended further into the rift, the rally route came into view in the distance. The day was broken down into 4 hours of transport, 1 hour of service, and 2 hours of motoring over 5 stages, which added up to 205 competitive kilometers. Stages 1 and 2 would be repeated and were split by Stage 3, which was a leg on its own. Stage 2 was the longest section of the season at 52 kilometers. The rally was being run on public roads and, although remote, a classic Datsun 1600 SS was sent out 30 minutes ahead of the first car to give warning and ensure the route was clear. With the route declared open, Azar Anwar with Julius Gige set the rally in motion, leaving lines visible on the gravel surface for the others to follow. Azar was only too aware that the Mitsubishi Evo 6 was not as quick as the cars behind, and was surprised that over the first 2 stages, they only dropped 36 seconds to be placed third.
We didn't expect to be so fast. We were touching 200. I'm just flat out. My car can't go any quicker. Even if the times are close or whatever, I just have to keep doing what I'm doing. I try not to break it and get to the finish without a problem.
Since acquiring the Evo 9, Lee Rose and Pierce Dakin have been dictating the pace and were once again in the lead. On such fast roads, any advantage would only be gained through sheer speed, and although they were quickest over Stage 1, they were only third on Stage 2, and the 6-second margin was neither here nor there.
It's very difficult because there's long stretches where you're just sitting in top gear, and it's difficult to keep a rhythm, and then you suddenly get to a very tricky bit where it's rocky and you've got to drive very carefully, but ultimately it is fast, quick as in top speed.
Carl Tundo and Tim Jessup had won this rally last year, and a repeat victory would be sweet. They were at max, often getting over 200 kph out of the N10. For now, they were in second, with Rose having beaten them on stage 1.
Go, 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 go. Well, I'm doing what I can, because you know, it felt good and I was pushing. The first section's a serious wake-up call. It's 200 plus from the beginning.
Baldev Chaga and Farooq Yusuf's hopes of challenging for the lead were squashed when they punctured only 10 kilometers into the first section. They plummeted to 19th and would spend the rest of the day trying to recover the 3 minutes lost. They were immediately quickest over stage 2, climbing an incredible 12 places to 7th.
I was sort of easing off anything. That's why I made the mistake of hitting the rock and getting a puncture. I think if I fight back, I'll end up damaging the car more, so I'm just going to keep it steady and fast.
Sami Aslam and Saqib Malik were back after a break of 2 rallies and got straight back into their stride. The Mitsubishi Evo 8 was one of 7 cars sponsored by different oil companies, all at the sharp end of the field. They were 4th overall, but the pace of the top 3 was so fast that they were 3 minutes behind. After only 3 rallies in the N8, Anthony Nielsen and Mike Ogopit have already nearly exhausted the potential of the car. They were pushing hard and towards the end of stage 2 hit a ditch, then in a shock, but no time was lost and 5th overall was impressive.
1 kilometer to the finish here, we hit a stupid ditch and it went to shock, and so that's what happened. Yeah, I think I'm just getting more committed. You know, I'm just more tempting, and so it's just trying to push it to the limit. But maybe I should slow down a little bit and drive it instead.
After a tense year chasing the Pirelli Young Stars promotion, the ARC series, Alfir and Faisal Khan have returned to the Kenya circuit. The experience gained fighting with the internationals has unearthed Alfir's ability behind the wheel, and 6th early on reflected this, especially as they were in the old car.
It's going well. It's a bit slow. We're getting a bit bored on the straights. We put it in 5th and we're just sitting there. It's just doing nothing for me. It's like even 600, you can actually, have a chat in the car. It's not really going anywhere, but yeah, we're having fun. So.
In 9th and out of place on the leaderboard were Asad Anwar and Kashif Sheikh. Lady Luck was not on their side when they punctured not only once, but twice. With no more spares, they'd driven cautiously and were trailing the leaders by over 7 minutes.
It was my time to have punches. We haven't had a puncher the whole season, so our time to have punches. So we'll try and catch up, but it's 3 minutes. That's a lot of time to catch up, 3 minutes.
Running out of fuel is normally embarrassing, but Anwar Pandya and Salim Khan were taking it in good spirits. They knew it was a risk when they didn't fill up at the start and eventually ran out on stage 2. They got back to service but had received outside help and were disqualified.
I didn't have a pump during the service, the remote service. It failed. So we were hoping for the fuel to bring us back. Unfortunately, it didn't, so I ran out of petrol. Yeah.
Missing from the leaderboard were Sushil Shah and Abdul Sidi. They punctured early on and decided to continue. Watch the front left. Further up the road, they hit a rock, damaging the suspension, forcing them into retirement. They can at least be pleased that the wheel would go to a good cause, and the locals would benefit from several pairs of sandals. After the first 2 of the 5 stages, Lee Rose was out in front with a narrow margin of 6 seconds. The race for victory would now be between Rose and Tundo, but it only needed a puncture to upset the odds. joined the action with Aslam Khan, who was only amongst 4 cars entered, challenging for the Classic Car Cup. Aslam was driving the now familiar Ford Escort RS, with his niece Samira sitting in the navigator's seat for the first time.
It's her first rally, and she's dead on with the notes, 100%. We did the recce yesterday. She was a bit apprehensive at the beginning of the stage, and she kept with all the notes throughout, and it's a lot of fun. And it's so beautiful to hear a beautiful female voice through the intercom.
The competition amongst the classics was short-lived, with all but the Escort dropping out of the event before the end of stage 2. Romy Bamra and Havinder Jatley in a Datsun 240Z ran out of fuel. The fuel pump had pumped all the fuel out through a hole in the pipe. Another 240Z, driven by Michel Pucherkos and Charles Kibua, rolled out of the rally in the first 10 kilometers, going over the edge of a narrow culvert. This left Aslam and Samira Khan the only car to finish in the category. In the 1980s, they would have been in contention for the overall honors, but against the current crop of Group Ns, they would only finish 16th. The result was enough for Aslam to secure the 2008 Classic Car Cup title, but his enthusiasm is such that he will be entering the remaining 2 rallies of the season. In the two-wheel drive category, 10 cars had entered. They would only be tackling the first 2 stages, which gave them only 90 kilometers of competitive motoring. Charles Hinga and Evans Mwenda were at the top of the championship table, desperate for a podium place to extend their lead even further. But at the beginning of the first stage, they punctured at speed on an easy left and rolled. With no help at hand, they were out.
I wasn't very sure whether it's the road which is loose or we have a puncture. So I was still trying to decide whether it's a puncture we have or the road is loose. Then we lost the car.
The favourites to win were the defending champions Jasmeet Chana and Randip Kalsi, but following a disappointing season, they were no longer in the championship race. They had not entered the previous 2 rounds and were focused on finishing. Surprisingly, they were off the pace and after stage 1 were in third, 2 minutes down. This was Adnan Suhail and Zahir Shah's second rally behind the wheel of the recently acquired Daihatsu Special. They were surprisingly quick, and after 40 kilometers of competitive motoring, were lying second. It was Leonardo Varese and Kigondo Karedi who were in the lead, driving one of the 4 VW Golfs in the event. They had a lot to go for. With Hinga out, a win on this rally would move them to the top of the championship table. Further down the field, the harsh conditions were taking a heavy toll. The bolts holding the drive shaft on Limi Karienye and Kimeli Correa's Toyota Levine sheared, leaving them with no drive. They improvised by borrowing a bolt from a spotlight, which incredibly got them to the end to finish 6th.
That one bolt held your drive shaft?
Yes, it did.
One?
Yes, one. We didn't even have brakes because when the shaft broke, busted the pipes. So we drove the last 52 clicks without brakes.
With the last stage an uphill climb out of the rift, suiting the front-wheel drive VWs, Adnan Suhail and Zahir Shah's Toyota-powered Daihatsu was at a disadvantage, and they slipped to third. Jasmeet Chana and Randip Kalsi were not pushing to the limit in favor of securing a finish. They were second quickest through the last stage and were not unhappy with second. Leonardo Varese and Kigondo Karedi were quickest over both the stages, never putting a wheel out of place. But it was only when the results had been tallied for all the cars that they were confirmed the winners. This was their second consecutive win, the reward of nearly 2 years of rallying.
Especially after we saw Charles on the side of the road, we thought maybe we ease off a bit because it's about the championship now, nothing else.
Leonardo had eventually won by nearly 3 minutes. Considering the cars had only tackled 90 kilometers, the time gaps behind were a reflection of how hard the route had been for these old cars. Baresi's win now places him at the top of the two-wheel drive championship, but only by 7 points. Charles Hinga will not be happy. It will turn the remaining 2 rounds into a real battle. Up at the front, the leaders were tackling stage 3, 24-kilometer section along the ridge of the Rift Valley. The only change to the leaderboard was that Baldev Chaga moved up 2 places to 5th, and Lee Rose extended his lead by a further 23 seconds. The command center for the rally was in the back of an overland truck situated in the center of the service park, and it was here the times were fed into the field computer, with results relayed across the radio network.
Position 3, car number 1, 59 minutes, 59 seconds.
As the cars left for the final 2 sections, they headed towards Magadi and to the start of stage 4 located in the remote village of Oltepesi. On the transport, the cars passed the Olgasali prehistoric site, where remains of early life have been uncovered. Further down the road is Lake Magadi, a soda lake completely surrounded by vast natural salt flats. Its scenic beauty includes flocks of flamingos which migrate between the chain of lakes in the rift. During the break, it had rained, enough to just dampen the surface, but up ahead the clouds did not look good. It was unlikely to affect the leading cars, and Lee Rose with Piers Dakin set about consolidating their lead and increased their pace with the knowledge everyone was going to be quicker. Then, just when they thought they had it in the bag, they punctured. With only 30 seconds in hand, they undertook the fastest wheel change of all time. Watch the clock.
Let's just go so we're in front. Okay? Let's just go so we're in front.
From stop to go, it had only taken 2 minutes, enough for them to lose the lead and slip to third. With Rose behind them on the road, Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup were unaware that they were now leading and were racing through the stage. Azhar Anwar and Julius Gige inherited second place. They were relishing the newfound speed of the Evo 6, which meant they were no longer driving defensively. Baldev Chaga and Farooq Yusuf continued to climb the leaderboard, and by the end of stage 4 had regained what was possibly their rightful overall position, 4th. Having clawed their way back from 19th was incredible. Sami Aslam and Saqib Malik are the masters of deception and disguise. They always seem to slip by with no dramatics. They were in 5th for now, but a puncture on the last stage of the rally would knock them down to 8th. This was only Anthony Nielsen and Mike Ogupet's 6th rally in a competitive car, and the indications are that a podium place is not far off. 6th overall on this rally was as good as it gets. With only one 50-kilometer stage remaining, the only question was whether Lee Rose could catch the top 2, bearing in mind Tundu and Anwar were unaware he was now behind them. There were 19 cars still running, spread across the route, with an hour between the first and last, and with the clouds having opened, they were effectively in different rallies. Asad Anwar and Kashif Sheikh were fortunate to be running 5th on the road and escaped most of the bad weather. They were still recovering the time lost from the 2 punctures, which had pushed them to the back of the field, but following a determined drive, they were lying 8th. Alfir and Faisal Khan could not have got any more out of the old Impreza. They were permanently on the limit, and it was remarkable they kept the car on the road to finish 7th. Izar Mirza and Ashad Khan had started 15th on the road, gaining places on each stage. Izar is undoubtedly quick and will be interesting to watch as he gains more experience behind the wheel. They would finish 9th. Quinton Mitchell and Sanjay Wasson are amongst the crop of young drivers who have only recently entered the sport. Having learned that consistency rather than attack is the best strategy for a result, they left the others to do the fighting. Their steady pace gained them 3 places and 10th overall.
To be honest, I prefer the closed road events because I think you've got a different sort of confidence when you're driving. Whereas here, you still have a hesitation through all the corners.
It was at this point the heavens unleashed a blanket of rain that reduced visibility to next to nothing. A typical African thunderstorm that was like turning on a tap. Caught in the middle were Kirit Rajput and Ravi Soni. Although it only stretched for 10 kilometers, it was enough for them to lose 4 minutes. They made up some time on the next stage, but lost 2 places to finish 11th. It was destiny that one car would be caught in the eye of the storm. That pleasure went to Minesh Rathod and Sachin Sumaria. They were reduced to a crawl, losing 6 minutes. Although it was dry up ahead, they'd lost all chance of a top 10 placing and had to accept 15th. All the cars were now in the last stage, and for those who needed to regain time lost, it was just not long enough. For Asad Anwar and Kashif Sheikh, it was their last opportunity to attack for a better position. They set the 4th fastest time, moving up 2 places to finish 5th. Baldev Chaga and Farooq Yusuf were too far back to challenge for 3rd, and with the championship at stake, settled for a pace to ensure 4th. But even at this speed, they were 2nd quickest through the stage.
It was actually a bit difficult today. Unfortunately, after the puncture, we struggled really hard on the second loop round. Took a few risks, tried to go quickly, and we managed to pull up 4th position, which is quite impressive, I think, because that one.
For Lee Rose and Piers Dakin, it was a race to the end, but surprisingly, they were only 3rd quickest. Regaining the lead was out of reach, and they had to settle for 3rd. But having retired on the last 2 events, this was a much-needed boost.
I'm not disappointed with my times, but there was lots in reserve. But yeah, what disappointed me was the puncture, but what to do? At least we got to the end.
On such a fast event, Asad Anwar and Julius Gige had not expected to be in contention, and had even expressed concern that being first on the road, they would hold up the rally. By finishing 2nd, the Evo 6 had proved it can be quick, and that Azhar has not lost any of his flair.
I finally got hold of a decent turbo that came from overseas with a proper restrictor, not one of the homemade jobbies, and that gave us a bit more power. And now we're swapping times with the top boys that I just couldn't catch all season.
The rally belonged to Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup. They may have benefited from Rose's puncture, but even without this, deserved the win, having been amongst the top 3 on each stage. To have beaten Rose on 3 stages restored Tundu's confidence that the N10 can beat the Evo 9. At the finish, the celebrations had already commenced in recognition that this was Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup's 2nd win of the season and their 2nd consecutive win of the KCB SNL Rally.
Yeah, it was good, and very happy with the pace. Kept up with Lee, and you know there's a good Lee and Baldy, and there's a good sort of like friendly rivalry going on, and to come out on top for once is good.
The race for victory had only been amongst the top 5, but Tundu and Anwar were the only 2 to have got round without puncturing. With the thunderstorm affecting so many of those further back, to be on the leaderboard at all was reward enough. The results have once again opened up the championship, and Baldev Chaga's lead now hangs in the balance. There are only 2 rounds remaining, and any of the top 3 are all in with a chance. The situation is the same in the Group N Championship, where Baldev Chaga needs a top 3 placing on the final 2 events to secure his first championship title.